What is othering? Othering is the act of unjustifiedly treating those that are not in your social group negatively for no real reason. This could be as simple as not wanting to be friends with those that wear glasses, to more extreme examples like racism, sexism, and other such isms. Why should we care? Why should we care about anything? I can't answer that, but I will try to answer why we should care about other people and why should we care about their feelings and our own feelings. Now, I don't think my answer is going to be great by any means. It's going to be an answer that I think is right, but it's not the best answer by any means. I'm not sure if there's a best answer. Best is subjective in most cases. For the first piece of the puzzle about why we should care about other people and their feelings, I have an example about a manga that I read recently, 2, 3 days ago at most. The manga is confusing, so I won't explain it that much, but essentially the main character is having to relive his past lives. And one of these past lives is of a man named Floors, who's him, really, but whatever. And he is known for creating a structure that is the Sphinx. They call it the Sphinx, looks at the Sphinx. It's not the Sphinx, there aren't pyramids right next to it, but they call it that, so I'm just gonna call it that. And everyone in the village that he lives in calls him Master Sphinx or something like that. But Flores doesn't like it. He hates it, in fact, because he doesn't like his creation. He thinks that he failed in creating the Sphinx. It's not what he envisioned with his inspiration. And when he's on his deathbed as an old man, all alone, he's saying as his final words that he just wants someone to say his name, because no one has in decades. Now, this is, firstly, extremely interesting and why I love the manga, but it's also very sad and also why I love the manga, because it makes you feel emotions. But anyway, getting off topic. This relates to empathy, othering other people, because Floors cares. Floors cares about what other people think. Even if it's just words that they're saying to him, even if they mean well, they admire him, he doesn't like it because he hates what they say, even if they don't mean any ill intentions towards him. This first puzzle piece is evidently a very complex one, and to break down this moment in the story would take probably hours to do fully. But at the most basic level, I can say is that Floors truly cares about what other people say to him. I think Floors knows that the other people don't hate him or anything. In fact, they love him. He's an idol of sorts. But he is more concerned with the fact that they won't say his name. And they do show that Floors tells people to call him by his name, but they refuse to. Not out of negativity, but because they enjoy calling him Master Sphinx or such. Now, maybe it is partly their fault, maybe it's partly Floor's fault for caring too much, but I think it shows how even small things can affect people in major and real ways. Now, for the next puzzle piece, it's from the same manga, but this piece is, I say, maybe less intriguing to me at least, but it's just as important. In another incarnation that the main character has, it's of a time where people die, of course, but if their brains are intact, they can be put into pods that keep their brain functioning. And their brains dream of paradise, I assume. They don't go into detail, but I assume that's what they're dreaming. And these dreams are real. Brains are experiencing these things. But are the brains alive? That's really the question. The manga calls them non-living, but they don't call them dead. Because evidently they're right there. It's the brain's alive. It is responding to stimuli, but it can't move. It can't talk. It can't send messages outside. It's just experiencing whatever it is inside its own brain. Now, the main character, he ends up going to the conclusion that they aren't alive and that they're merely a bunch of cells at that point. Whether or not that's true is really not actually answered. I assume the author left it up to the reader. I personally think that technically they're alive, but they're not living. They're not they're not experiencing new things, which is the entire purpose of living to me. But anyway, this relates to empathy and other people in that should you care about this brain that's being kept alive by machines? It doesn't really matter to you, does it? As long as the brain's from a relative, why should you care? It's not like the brain can have a conversation with you. It's not like you can have a nostalgic talk with it about the old times. It's just a bunch of cells to you. So, why do the characters care? I feel as though characters in stories can help us understand real life. Even if the world is entirely fictitious and nothing is based on reality, it can always have some meaning to your life. And I think this shows how even if the person is entirely immobile, can't do a single thing, people will still feel empathy towards it. Now, obviously, it may be more difficult for a lot of people to feel the same level of empathy, but I think lots of people would at least feel something. They wouldn't want to just kill off the brain because, well, why not? I don't care about the brain. It's just a bunch of cells in a glass box. Why should I care about it? And maybe they are right. Maybe they're wrong. Who's to say? I personally think that you should care, at least somewhat, about the less lucky, I'll say. Of course, in this specific case, this is very extreme. You can literally not interact with that brain in that glass box whatsoever. But say it's someone in a coma. Doesn't have to be someone you knew. You should still care about that person. Even if they're horribly disfigured and you can barely recognize that it's a human. If you can understand that that thing used to be just like you, then you can feel empathy towards it. And I think that's real and big. I hope that's not underselling it. I don't remember what was on the next slide. It's a blank slide. Okay, there we go. Now this is partly just another section of the first piece of the puzzle, because it deals with your own feelings, but I feel it's important to state. No, I feel it's a part that I feel that I can add upon what I already said. So this is a song by Kikuo, who is a Japanese producer who is very talented and very popular. And this song, Ashide, 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 is their most popular song. And it's about a girl who likes attention. That's really as much as I can say without it being, like, weird. Yeah. Anyway, she likes attention a lot. Like, it's extreme. And I think that feeling of wanting attention is really big. People say that other people are just doing things for attention, which is true lots of the time. But what I'm more concerned about is why? Why would someone do something for attention? What's the point? Now, this feeling of wanting attention, I think that it can come from various different desires. It could be that the person is afraid of being alone. It could be that the person wants to take advantage of those who care about them. It could be just that someone is bored and they want people to interact with, which I feel most of us can agree with. In the context of this song, I interpreted the girl as being neglected by her parents, which are mentioned in a few lines of the song. And I think that I think that the neglection that happened is the reason why she is so adamant about wanting more and more attention, even to the point that it drives her crazy. Now, I can't relate to this personally. I've never felt this extreme desire to want attention. But I think lots of us can agree that we've had moments where we want people to notice and to be interested in what we have to say or what we create. It's a natural desire that's very common and probably one of the most common desires out there. It's simply that it comes in different forms and different levels. It can just be as simple as making a joke, so people will laugh. It can be on the more extreme side, like the song where the girl does inhuman-like things to get attention. That's all to say that sometimes we care too much. Now, saying that, it may sound insensitive in a way, but I do think there is a section where you do care too much about what other people think. but there's also a point where you care too little. So I think we need to find the point where there is a middle ground of caring but not being obsessive over it. Now, of course, maybe this middle ground is different for some people, or maybe it's more difficult to find it for some people. Now, onto some stories which were read in the classroom. These stories, I feel, are related to empathy as a whole, first of all, but also related to many other different aspects of othering. These stories are related to different aspects of empathy, othering, and caring. Egg Patrol was a short story, essentially about a girl throwing eggs at a car because her mom told her to. The mom thinks that it's justified because the car parked in front of a fire hydrant, if I'm remembering correctly. And the mom assumed the person driving the car was a rich person. And the mom doesn't like rich people. And the daughter, she, of course, goes with what her mom says because she doesn't have a good reason to refuse. When reading this story, I firstly was very annoyed with the mother. She was irritating, to say the least. But I think it shows how our biases can very often seep through into empathy. We are more empathetic or non-empathetic towards those we naturally disagree with or those we've had bad experiences with. This is evidently othering. The mother in the story simply assumes that the person driving the car is not only rich, but a bad person, or someone who is different than her. She doesn't have any evidence that the person driving the car is bad. She just assumes it. This is basically the definition of othering. Now, the daughter goes along with her mother because, well, it could be that the daughter doesn't want to be yelled at for disobeying, but I feel more the context that the story gave. It's because the daughter cares about her mother and trusts her, and she isn't too hesitant to throw eggs at the car because she doesn't think her mother would be leading her astray. Now, the daughter does realize she's not doing something good, but I don't think she sees how it's particularly bad either. This shows how, when we care about people, trust them, that we may go along with what they say, even if it's not the greatest thing. This is not bad necessarily. Trusting people isn't bad at all. But it's fair to say as well that even if you trust someone very much, you should still doubt them. Doubting to a certain extent, I feel, is needed all the time. Of course, sometimes you can just trust blindly, or sometimes you can trust more willingly what people say. For example, if you are watching a video and it's someone very educated, let's just say it's Stephen Hawking. You're watching a video about him talking about black holes. I feel like you'd be more willing to listen to what he has to say and trust him. Because, well, he pioneered logic on black holes, but he also was a very smart person. So it's natural to trust him. Now, that may be an example where you can't really doubt them because you don't have the same level of knowledge. How are you supposed to question Stephen Hawking on logic of black holes when you have nowhere near the knowledge he does? Of course, we have tools now like Google or AI maybe. You can ask it and it can maybe generate you a solution or an answer. But it's not perfect. Now, moving on to the next one, we have Animal Farm, a very, very famous book by Orwell, who I forgot the first name of. But anyway, Orwell's book shows us a allegory of the Russian Revolution, and a little bit after that, it shows the flaws and the corruption that was rampantly taking over. It shows really what happens when people aren't empathetic, or rather, when people with power aren't empathetic. Of course, those in the lower parts of the societal hierarchy do matter. Their empathy towards others is very important. But those at the very top, if they aren't empathetic and they're cold, that's even worse because they actually have the ability to do great wrongs and make awful choices. Now, this can be a great conversation about politics and history, but I don't want to get into all that because it would take a long time, and also it'd be kind of weird for this video to get into that. So I'm going on to the next story. The Star Beast was a short story that I think at least was very bad. It was not good to me. I think the characters were way too heavily exaggerated in their archetypes. The humans felt unnaturally stupid and unempathetic. But what I'm more interested in is the beast of the story, who is an alien. And this alien, he is tortured, essentially, by humans. And the humans don't believe him that he's an alien. They think he's merely a beast that can copy what they're saying. But he really does learn the language, and he can communicate with them. But the humans just say, parrot, Perry, or something. I don't know. Something like that. Which I think was very unrealistic. I don't think any true scientist would see a creature, an unknown creature, talking in human tongue, be like, oh, it must be a parrot. No? Does that look like a parrot to you? No, it looks like a human with some fur. It's not a parrot. So, the book was awful from that perspective, but the beast itself, for the alien, I think was interesting at least. That's the one part I did like. And at the end of the short story, it shows how the alien does eventually succumb to the torture and the awful situation, and he does become a beast. I think this shows a side of non-empathy where it truly hurts those who are on the receiving end of no empathy towards them. Of course, most of us have someone that cares about us, but some people aren't so lucky. And it's a very true and valid fact that some of us don't have anyone to lean on. Of course, while it may sound insensitive of me, ironically, sometimes it is that person's fault. They push everyone away. They don't want anyone to be in their lives. But then later on, they regret it. But what I don't think should happen in that situation is people just giving up, or the people around that person giving up, saying how you push us away, so why should we come back? That is a dangerous notion. If you think that because someone pushes you away, you should never return, then I don't think you're a good person. People should be able to forgive. You should be able to let go of the past. It's the past, it's already over. It can't be changed. It can't be affected whatsoever. So let it go. It doesn't matter anymore. I think many people in maybe today's society, really throughout history, in all our lives, people are too afraid to just forgive and let go. Sometimes it's understandable. Of course, if someone murders your best friend, you're not going to just turn around and be like, well, maybe you're my best friend now. Lost that one. But you're right here. No, I don't think that's not understandable. But people that want to seek revenge against someone like that, that is understandable. I can see why. But I don't think it's right by any means. In situations like that, even those extremes, I think you should try to forgive. Of course, if the guy who murdered your best friend is still going around murdering your best friends, you probably shouldn't forgive him. You should probably escape that situation and get away from that guy. But all to say that you should be empathetic even towards those who are not empathetic. You should be able to forgive when someone isn't able to be forgiven. It is a contradiction. It doesn't make sense, but it's still true. Just because something is a contradiction doesn't mean it's invalid. In some cases, at least. I think the case I stated is one of those few where it is valid. Anyway, what was the next slide again? Oh, yes, the interview. I kind of forgot. Okay, anyway. So, I did an interview with a man who was named Josh Amazing. He was a nice man and fun to talk to. When I first saw him, he, if this will be rude to say, he seemed like a nerd who works in construction. That's probably a mean thing to say, but that's just what he looked like to me. It wasn't in like a negative way that I thought of him. That's just the appearance he gave off. And in a way, he kind of was. Of course, not in any bad way again. He was a man who works with a power company to provide power to the grid. And he also was in the Navy for 4 years, he said, and a lineman for a decade, I believe. And our conversation we had was mainly about electrical stuff because I myself want to become an electrician in the future. So I had lucky chance of talking to him about that sort of stuff. And he really helped me see different things I could go into, be it a lineman and the promotions you get there for a foreman, journeyman, master electrician. Well, not master because you're not an electrician. But yeah, the going up in the ranks and the sort of pay, no specific numbers, but good pay and what the job was like. After that interview with him, I did realize that I would definitely not want to be a lineman, so I'm sure that I'd much rather be an indoor electrician than a lineman up on a damn bucket truck. Which, speaking of bucket truck, Josh Macy told me a story about how one day he was with his buddy. He was on the ground on a very, very snowy day with his buddy up in the bucket. And when his buddy went to lower down the bucket, the truck started sliding down the road for hundreds of yards, I believe he said, and he couldn't do anything. He just had to move out the way as the truck slid. Thankfully, him and his buddy were fine. Probably a little bit scared after, but nothing serious by what he said. Now, this is not really related to othering, I will say. What is related is the conversation. What is related is the conversation itself I had with Macy. Now, I am not very good at having conversations with strangers. I'm very sure of that. But I will say it was fun to hear about what I could do in the future and what my life will possibly be. Of course, I'm guessing something unexpected is going to happen down the line, and I'm not going to get the exact life I'm thinking of, but I think it'd be neat if I got something close to what I want. That's really the best we can hope for most of us. What's the next slide? Oh, what did I learn? I. Okay, not we, I. What did I learn in the context of this unit? So this unit on othering people, as a whole, I think the main thing I took away was I think that I didn't really learn anything new. Honestly, I already had most of my thoughts. Honestly, I had already pondered on my own about empathy and such. I already had formed my own opinions. But what I do think I achieved was the aspect of joining segmented or fractaled opinions into one coherent thought. And that thought isn't what I can really word out well, it's more of a feeling, honestly. That's really how lots of things are. It's hard to put into words or even a solid string of monologue in your own brain how you feel about something. But I do think I've come to some sort of solid conclusion, and it has been helpful in that way. Oh, yes. This was part of the unit that we are learning. And that is, Tuesdays with Maury. Yeah, Tuesdays with Maury. The old guy's Maury, I think. Pretty sure. But it's somewhat famous, from my knowledge, about a professor and his student reuniting and professor's on his deathbed. You know, I'm not going to go into extreme detail. But the professor talks a very lot about caring about other people and being open. I do think the professor made many, many good points. On a few things, I disagreed with what he did say, but if nothing major. So, I think most of what the professor says in the interviews or writings that the student wrote down after the fact, I think. I think most people can learn from something that he said. Not everything is going to relate with you. Not everything is going to mean anything at all to you. But I think there is at least one thing people can learn from Maury. And also, when we were learning about Maury, it was just simple intrigue, honestly. It's probably why the story is semi-famous. Because it's simply intriguing to learn about someone that is dying. Death is, to me at least, the most interesting thing there is. Because there is no clear answer, there is no clear meaning whatsoever. There is only uncertainty, and that uncertainty makes us certain that we want to know why there is uncertainty. That may have been really confusing, but that's what I want to say. So, anything I think should be changed in the year. Okay. Why'd I read that? Like I was not knowledgeable. That would be the next slide. Anyway. Okay. So, the unit as a whole was enjoyable. I won't doubt that. But I will say, I think we should have. First of all, I didn't like Starbased. I think we should swap that out for a different thing, but whatever. I think most of the kids didn't mind it, so. I think that the unit should have been longer. Not because I particularly enjoyed the unit that much, but just because if the unit was longer, I think there'd be more time to really have us students think and go over othering and empathy more. I don't know what you'd have to add to the unit to make it longer or such and such. But I think that we would benefit from having more time to ponder and consider empathy and othering. But also, that may just be me thinking that the unit was short because time has been flying by, which is honestly very possible. Honestly, I don't know how the year is already over. I feel like freshman year just started 2 days ago. I don't know if that's a really good or really bad thing. Anyway, there are no more slides. That was the end of the presentation. I think my voice got raspier at the end of this. Probably because I've been talking for an hour. But that was fun. Bluff, you should say hi. Meow to the mic. No, you're not going to. You are not going to, It's so mean of you, Fluffbutt. You aren't going to meow to the mic. Don't chirp on my tiny test board. Whoa. Chessboard. It's chessboard, not test board. I forgot the CH and place it with a T. Anyway. This is going to be a lot of editing. Holy moly.